But let's talk about UFC on ABC 7. So that's going to take place in August in Yas Island, Abu Dhabi. So, ABC cards are usually pretty stacked, and the UFC kind of dropped a lot of fights on us at one time. I love it when they do that. Check out some of the matchups and some of the names, some of them from left field, others maybe questionable or whatever. We got Corey Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov. How's that not some sort of a title contender after Merab Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley hopefully fight? Nick Diaz, not Nate Diaz. Nick Diaz is back. He's fighting Vicente Luque, so that should be pretty interesting as well. Michael Chiesa, who just recently got married, congrats to him. He fights Tony Ferguson off an 8-fight losing streak, but very, very popular.
Yeah, it's a 7-fight losing streak. Don't get too ahead of yourself, George. Come on.
I apologize. Davison Figueiredo versus Marlon Vera. Too soon for Vera? I don't know. Mackenzie Dern versus Lupi Godinez. What did you think of this card that was dropped on us for UFC on ABC 7 out in Yas Island, Abu Dhabi?
It was fun. I will say I was a little surprised by A, Nick Diaz being back, and then B, his opponent. That kind of surprised me a little bit, especially the way it came out. I thought it was a typo because I thought Tony Ferguson. I don't know, like it all kind of caught me by surprise, but hey, I'm happy with it. I just hope it ends up being a really good card.
Are you saying Nick versus Tony is what you would have done, and Luque versus Chiesa, who I believe have fought once before? Was that how you would have ran it?
Something, like I don't know. Vicente Luque. For me, look, it's been really tough with Nick Diaz. He said something not too long ago that's always stuck in my head, and it's just that he does not like fighting. And this late in his career, that just hits home even more because then now he's just doing it to make money, and I just don't see very much upside in Vicente Luque. That just doesn't make too much sense for me. Good for Vicente Luque, but I don't understand why this matchmaking.
Mike Bond, why is Nick Diaz fighting? You usually have something up your sleeve. Is he like on his last fight and this gets him out of it and free and clear? Or you think maybe he just could use the money? What do you think is happening here?
Yeah, I'm not sure on that side of it. Definitely, as far as I know, not a contract thing. I think he actually has 5 more fights left on his UFC contract. So yeah, it's not happening there unless they came to some sort of deal. I think Dana said at the press conference that Nick did meet with Hunter Campbell over like a dinner, and they hammered out the details for this fight. So maybe it was something has changed there, and he has less fights, or who knows? Because I imagine in some sort of world, Nick would like to go do some boxing or something like that, but I'm not really sure. As I believe who said in the comments here, someone pointed out Mark England, perfect opportunity for them to have done Diaz versus Ferguson and one of them get a win. I think that's the way I would have played it. At least it would have been sad for the loser, but at least one of those guys would have had to win a fight, unless we got like a draw or something. But yeah, I think that's the direction I would have gone. This is another one with Nick Diaz you're going to be watching through your fingers a little bit. I know Vicente Luque seemingly isn't quite that same guy after coming back from the brain bleed and everything, but he is still in pretty prime form. He is still a dangerous guy, and I'm sure he is going to be extremely motivated to put a scalp like Nick Diaz on his resume and fight hard for that. So that's a little bit scary on that side of it. Nick Diaz going to Abu Dhabi, where you definitely cannot indulge in marijuana, is an interesting element of this fight too. So I don't know how this is going to go. It's always kind of crazy when a Nick Diaz fight happens, and here he is back. And then on the Tony Ferguson side, man, I just hope, again, it's not too ugly out there. But Michael Chiesa is a guy who is not going to try to smash your brains in on the striking side of it too much. So that makes me feel a little bit better.
Well, I wonder why. Maybe that's why Kevin Holland didn't want to go to Abu Dhabi then, because he was offered Nick Diaz, and I don't see how you pass that up, man. That guy's still a name no matter what, but he preferred fighting Mikhail Olechek, or however you pronounce his name. Nolan, is Chiesa versus Ferguson the right matchup?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think Tony's at this point where we're all a little concerned about him fighting in general. I did think, Chiesa's last outing was not particularly great or strong either. So it's within an arm's reach of, if you're going to book Tony Ferguson again, I'm kind of okay with Chiesa being on that list of fighters that you would give him. And like Mike said, I think perhaps the potential for brain damage is a little bit lower. And as everybody's pointed out, the Diaz fight was right there. I would have preferred that, but you also don't know too with Nick. Was Ferguson somebody he wanted? Like Nick's got that privilege, I think, right now to kind of be given a few names and say, which one of these names and dates do you want? And so, you know, from what I'd heard, it was like early March when these discussions started. So this has been going on for, you know, almost 3 months since between that and the announcement. And I think even once mid-March, Nick posted and deleted a picture of him and Kevin in the video game. I don't know if people picked up on that. So this is maybe the meal he went with in St. Louis with Hunter Campbell was more about the kind of the fine details of the contract or which opponent and date specifically. But this has been being discussed for close to 3 months, if not longer now. So I'm sure that this is a fight that he wanted to some degree. Is just my feel on it. Why that is, I guess we'll have to ask him if we get access to him. I'm not sure if we'll see him at any press events coming up here, but yeah, kind of out of left field.
Mike, you're going to leave us in about a minute here. So 15 seconds. Should this be Tony Ferguson's last fight? Yes or no?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
Please.
That's pretty fair. Pretty fair. Even on a win, it's nice to write off on a win. All right, Mike Bond's going to leave us here. Thank you. As always, great coverage out in Newark, New Jersey. He's got some big names to interview, so he'll bounce right now. Yes. And Nolan and Goes, we'll, you know, wrap up the show a little bit here. Figueiredo versus Marlon Vera. Goes too soon. Marlon Vera didn't get knocked out, but he got lumped up.
He didn't get knocked out, but he looked like he had been in a car accident, right? Like I think you have to not just let your body heal, but your mind a little bit and get back in the right place and figure out why things didn't work, get better, because that performance was it's not what we're used to seeing out of Marlon Vera. So yeah, I'd say a little too soon.
And Nolan, let's look at the top of the bill yet again. I mentioned the fight, but we've kind of been talking about the bigger names, the more popular names in Ferguson and Diaz. But we do have Sandhagen versus Nurmagomedov. Nurmagomedov says people turn down fights against me, you know. And then Sandhagen, boy, man, that guy, he's an exceptional fighter, but he's just kind of, you know, that loss to Sterling a few years ago has kind of haunted him, and lost to Peter Yan has kind of haunted him. But that guy's, you know, a pretty legit bantamweight.
Yeah, it's a great fight. Honestly, that card is sneaky, like,
yeah,
pretty fantastic now too, and checks a lot of boxes. It has that name recognition. It has those important fights for the division. But yeah, the main event is just fantastic. I know we were supposed to see this last year in Nashville, and that didn't work out with Umar pulling out of that fight. But to me, the faith that the UFC has in Umar is very evident, giving him these big name matchups. And Corey Sandhagen's just like that guy that hovers at the top of the division that, you know, if they matched him up with anyone at bantamweight, he would provide some serious problems and potentially beat them. So to me, this screams out title eliminator of sorts. We still need the Sean O'Malley versus Merab fight on the books to really kind of start using that language. But this, yeah, I think the winner of this likely in the UFC's eyes will be next in line. A lot will have to happen. Will Sean O'Malley try to move up after, you know, if he were to beat Merab? What if Merab wins? There's all these questions that we got to answer. But in my brain, this guy is getting in the winner of this is stepping into the on deck circle to be next up at Pat.
Yeah, this whole deal with fighters just wanting to add that second belt, it's starting to drive me nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to get to it first, right? We got to get to Dvalishvili versus Sean O'Malley. But yeah, that's a great card that they dropped on us. Better than some pay-per-views that I've seen in the past, in the recent past at least. So bravo to the UFC. I like the way they just dumped it on us as well.